the way that I am just matching this book exactly, hairstyle and all. Insane. Did not do that on purpose. Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. Today I'm going to be talking about I, Medusa by Ayana Gray. This is a Greek mythology retelling, if that wasn't obvious. It's basically Medusa's origin story. In this book, you are following Medi, who is around 17 years old when the book starts. She is the youngest daughter in her family, and she's always kind of been the one that's like the least noticed because she is a mortal and everyone else in her family is gods, or are gods. And so she, has been like the weakest, the quietest, the quote unquote least impressive one. Her parents were like, they're still gods, but they were like the former rulers of like the gods, so to speak. They had significantly more power, but now they have been reduced now that like Zeus and Poseidon and Achilles and all these other Greek gods have taken over. And so her parents have basically been preparing like her and her sisters to get married in an advantageous way, and they decide to throw a party where a number of Greek gods show up, including Poseidon, and eventually Athena shows up on the doorstep and things like that. And Medi is actually the one who captures their attention. Athena recruits Medusa to join her temple. Medi is very excited about this because she has dreamed about being able to explore the world like her and one of the friends slash servants that works for her family. They spend their time like poring over the maps that wash up on the shores of their island and things like that. And so when she gets the opportunity to leave, she really jumps at the chance. But Medi is not quite prepared for what life is like outside of the small island that she has grown up on. So yeah, I won't say more than that. I think if you read the summary in the flap or on Goodreads or, any other book summary site, it basically tells you everything that happens in terms of like a big plot point. But I think that if you know the story of Medusa, you might be able to figure out where things are going. But I feel like if you know Greek mythology in general or just stories in general, you can pretty much tell what's going to happen from the jump. So yeah, I picked this one up kind of on a whim. I originally got it from the library and just decided to give it a try. I haven't read a bunch of like these recent Greek mythology retellings. The only one I've honestly read is Circe and like Song of Achilles. And I've had like other ones on my list, but this one intrigued me partially because it imagined Medusa and her family as being not white and not Greek, which is something that I personally have never considered. But I also have to say, like, I'm not a huge Greek mythology person. Like, I remember studying it very vaguely when I was younger, but I don't like know the myths backwards and forwards. I just have like a general sense of what happens. And so I was intrigued by this one because it, again, like imagines Medusa as being a non-white character, from a small island. So it explores sort of like, Medusa's hair as being locks and what that experience is like when she goes to Greece, where she like stands out in the crowd quite a bit and explores what it's like for her to like be a minority and to be like looked down upon just because she's different, things along those lines. This book also has a little bit of that like magical school element because Medusa ends up going to the temple, and so there is a decent amount of this book that's about like her time at the temple. Not everyone who joins the temple ends up becoming a priestess of Athena. You have to survive various tests and trials and challenges and things like that. And so if you are someone who enjoys sort of like magical school stories, I feel like this one actually scratches that itch pretty well. I have like mixed feelings about Medusa as a character in this novel. There's part of it that is because like she's relatively young. Like I said, she's around 17 years old. And because she's been so sheltered, she's like very, very naive. And so there's a lot of times that like Medusa is just like so frustrating as a character because you're just like, she doesn't realize what's happening to her and around her a lot of times because, again, she's just very naive, isn't aware of the way people can be deceptive. She has a bit of a temper, and so that like definitely gets her into trouble and can be like very frustrating at times because you just want her to like control herself to a certain degree, a little bit better. But again, she's like a teenager, and so she acts kind of like a teenager. I also think that because Medusa is a teenager in this book, like this book leans YA. I think that this author also has written like young adult novels. So if you're someone who's like very strongly anti-YA, I think there's parts of this book that could potentially like rub you the wrong way and stuff like that. But at the same time, like this book is a very like engaging read. Like I was very much connected to this book. Like I wanted to be reading it. I wanted to know what was going to happen, even though like to a certain degree you know what's going to happen. But I also think that's part of the appeal of this book, is because like there's almost this growing dread that happens as you see certain things happening to Medusa. You know that it's not going to end well. And so there's a part of you that's just like, oh, how is this going to play out? Because you know that it's not going to play out well, and that at some point she's going to become cursed and become the Medusa that you hear about with the snakes on her head and things like that. And it's just like, okay, how does she go from this point to that point? And I think that Ayana Gray does a really good job of showing that character arc, and explaining that really well, and also getting you to be like sympathetic towards Medusa, but not like overly sympathetic towards Medusa. Like, I think that she doesn't try to make Medusa this victim completely. Like, she is a victim, don't get me wrong, but she also has her own flaws. So I think that that also like plays into what you know about Medusa, and also like plays against what you know about Medusa by providing this sort of like villain origin story where you kind of understand how she got to where she is, and you kind of don't blame them quite as much as you normally do. So yeah, overall I had a pretty positive experience with this book. I do think that the ending feels a little bit rushed. There's a lot of like really good build up to her becoming Medusa, so to speak. And I think that I could have easily taken another like 50 pages of her like post curse to see what that aspect of her life was like. But I suppose that wasn't like fully the point of this book either. It was more about her origin stories than anything else, which I think was handled really well. So yeah, overall, I feel like I would recommend this book to people, especially if you're someone who's been enjoying like the Greek mythology retellings. If you enjoy sort of like the villain origin stories and things like that, I think that this is a pretty like quick and engaging read. I don't think that it's necessarily like my favorite or the best one. Like I said, there are times where it feels less engaging because you kind of know what inevitably is going to happen. But I do think that the way she tells the origin story is really well done. I think there's also just like really good themes in here about like family relationships, sisterly dynamics, and also just like Medusa's friendships with the different characters that she comes across over the course of this book. That's really well done, that make this like worthwhile and worth reading. So yeah, those were my quick thoughts on I, Medusa. Let me know down in the comments below if you've read this book and what your thoughts were on it. Or if you have any questions about the book, feel free to leave that down in the comment section as well. So yeah, that's all I have for now. Thanks for watching.